Now from your do-it-yourself, fix-it-up-at-home network, tonight's episode, the stripping and refinishing of the mind. Step 1. One man lived in 2 cities on opposite sides of a river, which were connected by a bridge, which in fact is mostly where he lived. And a reporter flying overhead in a newscopter reported, "I don't get it. It's most difficult to sew up a rip in the seam in the rear of your pants when there are 2 leg openings available, and you keep trying to use them both." And a philosopher prowling the river in a garbage scow predicted, "I don't get it. A man who builds a house with only 2 rooms will never be satisfied in a 3rd one." And a drywall man, putting a good finish to himself, reflected, "The door jambs don't get it. The spreader doesn't get it. The blocking doesn't get it, and for damn sure the casing, the cover-up, cure-all for all of the miscuts and malalignments doesn't get it." Or, wait a minute, maybe it does, which not only makes sense in the extraordinary realm, but would also explain much back in the routine room of the mind. The understanding of the mysteries of life totally explained in a few words. How can you paint a red stick red? On one world, the way to become intelligent is to never think about yourself. The way to become a genius is to never think about your thinking. When a child, one boy asked for a guitar. His father instead told him to play with his mind. Years later, they both regretted this. Myth tells of a man who died and went to apply for his afterlife reward and was confronted with a claim that he had not had the proper relationship between seriousness and his thinking. To which he responded that, contraire, he had indeed taken his thinking quite seriously. To which he was responded to with the counter that there was the problem. He had taken it too seriously. Well, he pondered this for a minute, then said, "Well, on that basis, you can't win, can you?" And it was pointed out to him that he should have noticed this about thinking back when he had the chance to do something about it. This was not at all the kind of afterlife he had imagined. The value in studying extraordinary ideas for those seeking extraordinary awareness is in helping get their minds off themselves. At the normal level, all data is bullshit data. And while at the secret level, the data there appears an exception to this, in the end, all it turns out to be is exceptional bullshit data. You can either comprehend this now or comprehend this later. But rest assured, if there is a later for you in all of this, you will comprehend it eventually. A man and his musings. Early on, I had an acquaintance who I ate and swallowed. I took him for a friend, but now I wish I could dislodge him and spit him out. Nothing personal. I just wish I could spit him out. The reformation of the mind covered fully in 8 or 9 words. How can you teach a deaf dog tricks? Over on the planet of Nod, one creature was struck by a strange affliction, which caused him to periodically wake from his normal peaceful slumber state and experience moments of undirected alertness, which he found ultimately irritating. Then, since he couldn't seem to cure it, he attempted to treat the anomalous condition by trying to direct the unexpected moments of alertness in some useful manner. But success was not to so easily be the case. And what he seemed to be saddled with was simply a continuing series of unpredictable, passing moments of unnatural, unnecessary alertness. So, he just learned to live with it. After all, it could have been worse. He could have had the hives. A boy asked his father, "If I keep scratching this thing, will I ever grow up?" "Ha," replied the elder, "that's the only way too." Perhaps I should make note that this is not your run-of-the-mill family. But then again, if you're so run-of-the-mill that you need to hear that, you're too run-of-the-mill to ever realize what this is all about anywho. And with post-haste and postage due, a viewer responds, "There is no need for you to be so, shall I say, insulting." Yes, as a matter of fact, you can say that. But back to his letter. "So insulting to us viewers. If I didn't understand what you're talking about, I wouldn't be watching your show, now would I? Sir, try this on. You watch your own mind, don't you?" And damn if he didn't refuse to answer that one. How to avoid the plagues without outside assistance, outlined in the following outburst. When you've changed your name to Rat Droppings, you don't have to have an unlisted phone number. More regarding fooling around with the mind and thoughts. If you go into combat believing that there is a bullet with your name on it, guess what? There is. There was an ancient civilization on earth at one time who taught each other, and themselves of course, that everybody's house is haunted, but that you have a choice, sorta, of having a whole multitude of various ghosts spooking your residence, or just one. But if you take the just one route, there is a risk. There's the danger that you might eventually see how to get rid of it. No wonder they were ancient. Gone, and with damn good riddance, wouldn't you say? Ha! Be rid of it indeed. Ha! In permanent press and contoured corners. Ha! How to find what you're looking for revealed in a brief sentence. How can you tell a bird not to fly over the edge of the sky? There are two basic ways to get by in this life. One is to not know what you're doing, and the other is to be aware that you don't originally know and then go on to try to know. And of course, not to mention to be a pitiful failure thereat. And a boy asked his father, "Was that the joke for the day?" To which the taller of the two replied, "How come you think everything's got to be a joke? Huh? Why?" And the lad said to himself, "Well, geez, it was just a joke." At which point the heavier of them said, "Are you talking to yourself again?" And the absolutely astounded boy exclaimed, "How'd you know?" "Just a joke," he responded, "same as everything else. Just a joke." And hearing this, the smaller of the two was, to a reasonable degree, relieved. That is, until the old man realized what occurred and slapped the relief right out of him. "Phew, thanks," said the boy. "Yeah, I know," said the father. "We both needed that." "Wow, I'll say," said the kid, determined to have the last word, at least where possible. Like in a fictional story like this. Wow, I'd say. Meanwhile, on the other side of Gotham City, near the frontal lobe section, another young lad was saying to his older brother, "Hey, let's play bat droppings and Robin." And the prior in line sibling noted that a reference to rat droppings had already occurred in tonight's show and reminded the younger of the depth of disdain in which their father held the use of other people's material. And this, oh so true admonishment, so shamed the lad that he reflexively cried out, "Well, slap my face and chide me mercilessly." So the elder brother slapped his face and chided him mercilessly. And a viewer immediately writes, "I have been watching your show for a long time now." No, he hasn't. He's been thinking about what he thought when he watches the show. But back to his letter. I've been watching your show for a long time now, and even thought I overall, and even though I overall enjoy it immensely, though couldn't explain why, I am still continually thrown off my mental balance by how little, verging on no, sense some of your stories and comments make. Yet, taken in the overall context and my experience thus far with what you say, I feel that they must be saying something of consequence and that I just don't get it. Sincerely, P.S. Fuck you, yours, etc. How to quit worrying over what other people do and say, detailed in these words. Why don't you throw away your watch and other time-keeping devices? Definitions. Idiocy. Thought not subject to close scrutiny. And I mean close. And by that I mean extremely close, which is to say extraordinarily close, by which I intend to convey the idea of scrutiny that is so close as to disable normal thought and thus free one from a state of idiocy. A boy once complained to his father, "Every time I ask you about something, your answers run me around in circles." But the old man was having none of it and denied any such responsibility for what the lad described, and suggested instead that he take a look at how the human mind operates. And the boy agreed that he would, while wondering how close this might eventually bring him to scrutiny. A man once told his troll, cross that bridge when you come to it, how to satisfy all of your special hungers in one sitting, a few words. What is it that you say after you've shut up? Little known fact, in the instant, just before you die, you get a real, serious look in your eye. Please note this also occurs at the moment as a child when thinking first kicks in. In a faraway land, some faraway people had a legend that described their supreme being not as a wise, compassionate God, but as a deranged, disbarred optometrist, intent on persecuting, or at least severely annoying, mortals, unfortunate enough to cross his path. In faraway lands do oftentimes reside faraway people. A boy asked his father, "When I die and grow up, can I go far away?" And the elder, being the smarter of the two, we hope, replied, "Why wait till then?" A question to which no truly alert young lad has a truly alert reply. And a viewer writes to say that he has a friend who has a television set that only picks up shows that are about the mind. That no matter what the words are talking about and no matter how you may keep trying to think otherwise, everything that's seen on the screen is actually just about the human mind. And of course your question is, how does he ascertain the difference between such a screen and his own mind? You tell him, Tiger. A boy once ran away from home and took refuge in a single room by himself. He lived to regret it. It was inevitable that he'd do this, or he'd never been able to live to regret it. And a Children's Welfare League wanted to contact us and complain about this particular story, but just couldn't figure out exactly what to complain about. Or, as they used to say out in the country, everybody wants to die, but nobody wants to go to heaven. And this reminder from our viewer's guide. Any story involving two or more people is an allegory. Same as any thought you ever had that has two possibilities, being a metaphor for a real thought. And a Thinkers Protective Society wanted to write in and express umbrage at this reminder. But after the letter of protest was written, sealed in an envelope, and the postage committee was in the act of licking the stamp, a sudden sound of thunder startled them, and they didn't know whether to shed in their pants or give their hearts to Jesus. So, as they are wont to do when faced with such uncertain dual alternatives, they proclaimed the meeting adjourned and repaired to O'Healy's Pub for post-startled refreshments. And now this definition. A deadhead. Anyone who can count to 2, but no further. A boy said to his father, I feel that I could make better progress toward my extraordinary goal in my head if I could better formulate to myself the concept of a problem inherent in man over which I must come. And the elder spit in the dirt and didn't reply. Sickness. All sickness is caused by living with other people. The matter of sickness as profitable to the few on an extraordinary spree. All mental sickness is caused by associating with other people's thoughts. And now, the matter of head sickness for those further on up the road. All apparent sickness of consciousness is caused by your association with your own thoughts. The doctor will see you now. Well, now I don't want to see him. I said the doctor will see you now, but I don't need to see him now. I'm telling you for the final time, he'll see you now. Isn't that just like life? Always waiting to the last moment to show you what to do, and by then it's too late. You've already passed the place where it needed doing. But say, hold on there. That sounds suspiciously close to how one's own understanding would manifest itself. Perhaps we could just pop in and see the old doc just for a sec. Then, right in the middle of the operation, a nurse knocked over a cart, suddenly causing the patient to awaken and cry out, I think. Therefore, I'll double bill myself for this unneeded surgery. And now this important information from our secret extraordinary persons file. How to tell that you are losing your mind. When you come to visit yourself, there's no one home. God, it's good being tipped to such info as this. It's being tipped to such info as this that keeps you going. What? How to go everywhere you want to go without ever leaving home. Stop thinking about where you want to go. And finally, additional conclusive definition. Thought. The deft turning of nothing into something. We are to the stage here at the station, the program, that the majority of the mail we have been getting usually ask if that is actually gasoline we're pouring on the hood of that car when we said, oh, that's... No, I got it. They ask... No, that's not that either. Now I got it. They ask, is it serious when they hear it said that a person who would aspire to understand what life is about would absolutely ignore, abandon, refuse to think about anything that is generally being thought about, that has ever been thought about, but in particular, at least verbally identified, that anything that's being specifically, contemporaneously thought about, which the only way you know it, of course, is it's being discussed. And after we had our research and pondering committee research and ponder this, it was decided that we draw a chart, but the chart committee was off that week, so you're going to have to imagine it. Did you imagine a chart? So imagine a chart, and it's showing a kind of progression that can be charted. As you noticed, those of you that pictured the chart, and it would go like this. That you would first realize what a waste of time that you would individually, personally, with no demonstrative proof needed nor available, that you would understand the folly, the waste of criticizing what other people are thinking about. The next stage would be that you would stop thinking about what other people are thinking about. It would be probably, I don't have the chart here with me, but if I remember, it would probably be somewhat of a gradual, well, something like, the best I remember, that kind of progression from getting over criticizing what other people are thinking to the complete abandonment of thinking one way or the other what other people are thinking. What is normally seen amongst ordinary people as being the maximum of that is at that level. That is, of the progression I was going to describe from the chart, that is about as far as people ever get, and normally people do not get at that stage and stay there. It is a spasmodic ability that some people, it would be considered to be very insightful, some people are considered to be extraordinarily wise, have here and there throughout the history of man expressed some idea similar to that perhaps we are on the wrong footing to be even concerned what other people are thinking. Perhaps it is of no consequence, but it's always left at best as a kind of philosophical musing. You have to, on your own, realize that what everyone else is thinking about, it does no good to keep or trying to reach into even higher levels of hyperbole. It's just a fact that whatever other people are thinking about, if you're trying to understand the basis of thinking, you got no business thinking about it. It can offer nothing. And once you see past the point that it can offer nothing, it's worse than offering nothing, because it will stop you from looking. It's because you will stay entangled without any realization of it. You'll stay entangled in the areas in which everyone else is looking. Whatever the common problems are, and this does not belie the fact of the so-called historical problems, you can be concerned over whatever the political climate is of your day and time according to its descriptions. That's the only way you know there is a political climate. That's the only way that you know that there's anything going on that is an output, as a product of the human mind, is that's being discussed. Which, of course, if you knew that, then the rest of this is bullshit anyway. It's meaningless. Or to put it more bluntly, if you understood that, but of course you would have known that. It's all the way from the historical problem, say, this is from ordinary views. Is there a creator? Is there a God? Or what happens when you die? That's the kind of things that ordinary minds continue to say that are very important. All the way from that to whatever would appear to be questions of a more ephemeral basis, such as concerning the political climate of your day and time. When ordinary minds try and consider or try and think about, try in any way to look into the nature of life, however the mind describes it to itself, without any doubt, all you've got to do is notice for yourself. And if that is too frightening, take a quick survey of history like that, and you'll see that it's always been so, that there are two or three of these so-called historical problems that plague men's minds. And then there are what amounts to top 40 variations of the day in which the minds of the day, the intellects of the day, with which the intellects of the day are concerned, and they appear to be contemporary problems, though, such as the political situation, the economic situation, the moral situation, the standards of art and intellect, everything that is civilization, which is all in the outputs of the human mind, and we're not talking about anything to do with physical survival. So an ordinary mind, you can check with yourself if history doesn't show it, you started out. All human minds, you've got no choice. Everyone is feeding from the same trough. Or to put another way, your trough, your mind, is being force-fed from the same source. And so if you were attempting to be, or if you found yourself being philosophically inclined at a very early age, if you find yourself, even before your teens, reflecting on the nature of life, trying to ponder questions that even the adults around you seem to have, in which they seem to have no interest, they would have been formulated on the basis that the questions had already been formed years ago and were still in various configurations being formed, being dealt with in your time. Can you put that more simply? God, I hope so. Oh, sure. The only way that you have any notion about is there a God is that you heard that. The only reason that you have any notion about, I wonder if I'll live after I die. You didn't come up with that. You heard it somewhere. Oh yeah, you don't die. You live after you die. You say, well, I'll be damned. I didn't know that. Now you know that. But then after you once know that, then you can work on it. Then later you can go, wait a minute, I don't believe that. You can check with other people. Some people believe it, some people don't. Then you think, well, I wonder if there are taller people somewhere in the world that believe it. And you can go look them up, and then you can wonder, well, I wonder if there are any people on this planet that have 6 toes who do believe it. And so you can chase them down. Then you think, I wonder how many books have been written pro life after death in Swahili. And you can check them down. Does anyone ever ask themselves, is the questions I'm dealing with of any consequence? Ordinary minds would say they do, but the problem is you're giving a test to the same person who's administering the test. Does anybody begin to catch on? I know you do in a good lucid moment, but we're taping this for civilians, so I'll ask it rhetorically. Does anybody begin to catch on? I swear to God, I hate to be crude and just come out and say it. But I don't know any way around it, especially. I could have hidden figuratively, if not literally, behind the chart if certain people hadn't forgotten to bring it out. So I may just have to be blunt. Has anybody begun to suspicion? All right, realize. No, suspicion. It frightens people. The kinds of people that would use the word suspicion instead of suspect, it frightens them to make absolute statements. So let me stay with the phrase, does anyone begin to suspicion that anything that you ask your mind, when I say you, any question presented to your mind, God, I hate to say it. Okay. Do you realize that any question presented to your mind your mind will either say yes or no? Well, as long as we've gone that far, do any of you begin to see that any fact, I say fact, any idea, but someone says, here's a fact, and they present to your mind. They say, here's a fact. Is your mind will either reject it or accept it? There, I've said it. What do you think? Huh? What do you think? Huh? What do you think? Huh? What do you think? Don't believe it, eh? Believe it, eh? You don't believe it, eh? Huh? I don't care whether you believe it or not. Do you care? It's good to go chartless sometimes. I hope it doesn't result in an unwanted pregnancy, but it's known as bareback mental surfing. For those of you who enjoy extremely subtle sexual innuendos from another universe, I guess. I know someone it made sense to, though, so there. Sad thing is, they died some years back, but it would have made sense to them. Well, all I'm talking about with all this is the same thing I've been talking about for the last few nights. It's something that the mind will never see unless you can find another place inside your brain, another place inside your mind, if you like it in a more metaphysical sounding realm. Unless you can get free from your mind, you cannot see that the mind, you can look at it one of two ways, is absolutely boundless or is an absolute small locked room in which there is no way in and out. Either way, you're left with the same thing. If it's a small locked room and there's a set of blocks in there with which you apparently can play, you can arrange those blocks in any way you want to, and no one can stop you. Life will not interfere. There is no inherent physical law that will stop you, anyone, from arranging those blocks in such a way that someone can tell you, oh, you don't die. I can't believe you still believe that. Oh, no, when you die, you spring right back up in another universe. There's no need to be parochial and me say, hey, we're Italians, we can believe anything we want to. Italy's a free country. No, it's a free planet. Better than that, it's a free universe. Forget all those rules of physics and all those laws of chemistry and all that horse shit. In this universe, there are no laws. If someone tells you that once you die, you spring back to life, or if someone tells you that they know what they're talking about and you don't, remember this. Oh yeah, now remember this. You can believe it, or you can tell them to take a hike. It's that simple. Now I know that the mind would like to say it's much more complex than that. Or the mind would want to say this, if it could. If the mind was this intelligent, it would want to say this. Perhaps the simplicity is somewhere in the neighborhood that you describe, but, here it comes, but the question, the matter under consideration, in this case life after death, is far too complex to be dealt with on such a simplistic level. Could I speak for everyone and say that superficially sounds impressive? But sounds impressive to what? Your breathing, your thighs, your stomach. Obviously not your liver. Your mind. Well, I'm going to cut it short and go to the punchline. I'm going to go to the last level. Seeing as how, apparently, I'm just guessing, I've dragged most people through the gravel to the point that serious distraction, if not momentary brain damage, seems to have resulted. It's like this. At least I'll simplify. For someone to go along the path of discovering what life's about, undergoing some extraordinary experience, as it's claimed, to actually see what the hell's going on, then, amongst other verbally describable progressions, one of them would be the one I was trying to kick your ass up and down tonight, and that is to think is part of a tug-of-war. To have a human mind, that once the mind is fired up, you are engaged, if you're ordinary, you're engaged the rest of your life to the same degree that you pay any attention to your thinking, to the same degree that you give awareness to thinking, your thinking, to the same degree to which you claim to be conscious of your thinking, that you are a thinking person, that you would consider yourself a thinking person. To that same degree, you're involved then. You're a part of a non-ending soccer game, a tug-of-war, a kind of combat. That the only way you can think, the only way that your thinking appears to have any significance is in comparison to other people's thinking. The only way that any idea can stand up is that it is propped up, that is, that it is opposed by some other idea. So you'd go the rest of your life, and you could be not only a self-proclaimed or self-assumed thinker, you could be recognized as a thinker. But you're engaged the rest of your life not with any thinking that is going to come to any conclusion. The closest it will come, ordinary minds would deny that. That's why I do come to a conclusion, but the conclusion always is my thinking in some area overcame somebody else's thinking, in my opinion. That's their conclusion. But if the human mind, if you can get it between cities, if you can get it lucid for a second, objectively speaking, for a second, and ask the human mind, anyone's, from Einstein on down to you, ask them, have you reached any one conclusion about the nature of life? And the answer is no. The only thing they reach is what appears to be a conclusion, and after that lucid moment they deny it, and they will use words like conclusion and fact, but it's only a conclusive fact in any person's opinion, no matter who you are. The only way that your mind accepts anything as a conclusive fact is that it is in comparison to someone else's opposing fact. There is no such thing as a free-floating conclusion or fact. The mind cannot look up and go, oh, there's a fact. It takes being conscious in an extraordinary outside the mind. But the mind does not reach free-floating facts. There is no truth except compared to what you is concluded to be somebody else's non-truth. That is the level at which ordinary humanity plays out their intellectual life. It's neither good nor bad, but it's not seen. It's not seen as such. It is simply a tug-of-war. It is a game out on the field. The players change continually. You can jump from one team to another. You can step over the sidelines momentarily and not be in play when the subject reaches some area in which you have no interest. But for the rest of your life, mentally, it is a kind of game going on out there in the field, and there is no winner. There is no conclusive score. It's not possible. It's just a game. It is not a game with a finish to it. It's a game. It's a sport. It is a battle. But a sport is actually... it's a sport. If, that's the common level. That's the level at which 99% of humanity has always played out their mental existence. The next stage would be, assuming that people ever do it and it existed, but here's what the next stage would be, is a person, and everyone starts out the same level. Everyone starts out, that is the nature of thought. That is the nature of the intellectual life, is that game. There are a few people later, after they've played the game for a while, after they've been involved with the game for a while, you've got no choice, but after they've been involved with it for a while, it's as though they can take self-designated times out rather than accidentally, that they can step off the field, not just when the game going on, that is, the subject under discussion, fails to interest them, but that they can betake themselves off the field momentarily, and they look at the game, and they realize that they're opposing ideas, that the conflict normally going on, or the game going on, of the conflict between their ideas, that's their team at any given time, and the opposing ideas, they look at it and they realize normally I look at the opposing ideas as being totally without merit. That it is the opposition. They're fools, they're idiots, or they wouldn't be opposing my ideas. That they look on it and they can get momentary glimpses of sort of an impression, a sensation, or the suspicion that perhaps I could do better. You can take your choice of these, it's the same thing. Perhaps I could do better. Perhaps my thinking would expand and grow if I did not if I had the energy available to me to expand my investigation and my thinking that I am now expending on opposing them. Or looked at conversely, they look and say, well, it's a conflict, it's an opposition of thinking, and I am all the time critical of thinking that is opposed to mine. I look at as being untoward, ignorant, dangerous, all in negative fashion. But then they can get to this point. The first stage is given that may be true. That notwithstanding, am I accomplishing anything personally by being involved with that? If they are wrong, what good does my criticizing? What good does my attention to their fallacious way of thinking benefit me? What am I gaining, even if I be correct, even if I be on solid intellectual ground, to oppose these other ideas? What am I doing? Well, my hand, spread out like this. No, it's not that. So you get tied up with, and the mind can say, to what benefit, to what avail is my opposition? Now that was the first level I was trying to say, that people can get to that so-called level of realizing or suspecting that it could be a waste of time, could even be detrimental to them, but at least a serious waste of time to be involved with opposing other ideas that are incorrect. If they're incorrect, let them fall by themselves. What does it have to do with me? And they can even come up with general ideas that not only is it a waste of time, it's probably somewhat pathetic of me to do this, because if they are wired up with a certain kind of emotional inclination, they can go from that to feeling some forms of self-condemnation that it's my vanity making me do it. That I'm wasting my time. I'm trying to prove that I'm right. And if I am right, why do I need to prove it to people who are wrong? It's very fleeting. But there is that philosophical, that theoretical sentiment is periodically expressed amongst ordinary people, a few people. Do you follow? It ends up bleeding over into religion and all kinds of other so-called behavioral directives and attempts at reformation. But it starts out as an intellectual feeling that even if my ideas are correct, which all ordinary minds assume their position on the field at any particular time is correct. If not, they'll change it. So theirs is correct, and any in opposition to it is your right hand is incorrect. And they can have little passing moments of feeling as though this is even getting into a psychological area, that it's not only do I see it as being a literal waste of my time, it's wasting my energy that could be better spent on pursuing the truth to even greater depths. But on top of that, it may be the only reason that I keep insisting I'm right is vanity. It's something to do with my personality. Why should I try to prove to people who are too dumb to see that I'm right how they're ever going to see that I'm right? The next level would be, if somebody could do that, and you've got to be able to, so to speak, almost live at that level. It cannot be spasmodic, it cannot be periodical, and it cannot be some idea that you have adopted from someone else. That is, you read about it or heard about it. Well, that's true. That makes sense. By God, I believe it. Believing has nothing to do with it. If you get to the point that by and large in your mind, that your general place of residence is one from which no criticism issues to those who live at different mental addresses. That you're out on the playing field, that you're still by and large on the playing field. More and more time you'd spend on the sidelines, but you're out there, you're still aware of the game, and to varying degrees you're part of the game. But no longer is the impetus for your participation, no longer do you feel that you're fueled by any attempt, any desire, not only to criticize, but to overcome the others. That is no longer a real, everyday, a real-time part of your intellectual life. It then seems as though more and more that you are playing the game, let us put it this way, inside your own head. It's almost as though, it's sort of like you have abandoned everybody else, not either pro or con, but you see it as being somewhere between a waste of time, irrelevant, not even potentially profitable to you to continue to oppose them, to criticize them, to even play with it. That there is no chance, literally, you can see it, there is no chance that what's going on out there with other people can in any way benefit me. Not at all. It's just obvious once you see it. So then, so to speak, there's a period that is almost played in your own head. That is when it gets truly, potentially profitable. That is now the only opposing team you have is in you. The only opposition to what you think is the nature of the mind. I know verbally that doesn't say much, but then the stage after that is once you realize the nature of the mind, then you quit opposing you. Or put another way, then you realize there's nothing to oppose. Or put another way, you understand there's nothing to think about. Or put another way, you realize there's nothing to think. Or put another way, you realize. Thank you, and next time we will have the goddamn chart here. And then I'm sure they'll clear all of this up to everyone's satisfaction.